Hello and welcome to another episode of Pokémath. Here in episode number 59. Yeah, 59. Quite a lot already. But I'm joined by no other than Sander Wojcik. Back-to-back first seat at Internet with another crazy creation of his. And, well, Sander, today we're going to talk about not one, not two, certainly not three, but four Yveltals in one deck. So, welcome, Sander, and thank you for joining me here again today for another of these episodes here.
Yeah, no problem. It's always fun to uh, review my decks a bit together. I mean, this deck is maybe a bit easier
This
to
is
look
one of the
into.
craziest things. So, like I said to you a little earlier, indeed, like I've seen a lot of crazy things from you over the last years, but this year actually seems pretty straightforward. Am I right?
Yeah, this list is very, to the point, I would say. It's you basically just play an combination like a mashup of cards that work well against a couple of good decks in the meta. It's
Oh,
not actually that there's no game plan. The only game plan in this deck is countering the five tier one decks. So
but
it's
wait, isn't it
pretty
one
to the
tier S
point.
deck and then four tier one decks? Isn't that how this works?
Yeah. I would definitely agree that it's actually it's actually kind of crazy. You play like so many cards to beat Lugia, and you still, you're pretty good against Lugia for sure. But even then, Lugia can actually win against this deck. In testing, the weekend before, I was testing against Brian, who got ninth, and I got tested against you, Stefan. Like you definitely won games against me, and I lost games against Brian as well. Like I wasn't actually having like people say, like, oh, maybe you have like a 90% win rate. I don't I don't think that's
it,
necessarily true.
no,
Of
it
course,
was
when
not
you
that high actually. No.
yeah, of course it matters because in testing, you and I think Brian, they know my lists. They from turn one, they know what my deck is capable of.
Yeah.
I think at LAIC, some of my opponents, especially in game one, they were a bit maybe too cautious. I think a lot of the opponents I faced, they had in mind that they were going to get a lot of value from the minion, and then they were going to slowly take some prizes, and then
Yeah.
kind of finish the game. I think a lot
Oh yeah.
of my opponents they immediately kind of went for the Luminion play, and with the Radiant Gardevoir that is a bit too slow. You give this deck way too much time to play Sydney's with the Gardevoir. The Luminion doesn't one shot. So I think
What?
some of my opponents in
Great
actual
inclusion,
tournaments,
Sander. Great inclusion indeed.
yeah, yeah. I think my opponents played a bit too cautious. In testing, the thing I struggled the most against was the most simple Lugia game plan. Attach energy, play Marnie at the right time, and hope
Yep, that
hope
was.
the Yveltal whiffs for a turn, and then you can win as Lugia.
I think that was also what my first game plan was when we first started playing this. I was like, okay, I've seen these control things before, a lot, in fact, right? And okay, we're not gonna go slow anymore. No, we're just gonna Marnie and pray.
Yeah. I mean, control always has like I think what makes it interesting against control is that you can play in two ways. You can play to really conserve your resources, or you can try to pressure them. Because a lot of times the control deck, if you build a control deck properly, the control deck is gonna have more resources and a very clear game plan and some kind of like value engine like Eldegoss, Palpet, Celine. Gonna have some way to gain an advantage in the late game. So playing too slow is actually like playing too conservative and playing like not putting up enough pressure can actually backfire. And of course, playing
Yeah,
too aggressive and getting rid of your resources can also backfire because you could run out of resources, right? So I think when playing against a control deck, you really have to find a balance, or you have to kind of judge depending on the situation which strategy is better and kind of commit to it. I feel
indeed.
like
Yeah,
if you're kind of like don't know an exact control deck list, that can be difficult. And if you actually know what you're up against, you can actually really accurately make the right decision. Is this a good spot to play a little bit more conservative, or is this a good spot to just play aggressive, play a Marnie, just attach energies and try to win in with a more aggressive game plan? And I think that somewhat makes it like a little bit interesting, at least to play against control decks. I think it can also be like a bit frustrating because if you make the wrong decision, Like if you make the decision to play aggressive, but you lose too many resources, then and you run out of resources, it's like it can feel like a bit hopeless.
I think
And if you
all
play
it takes
slow,
is just one misplay, one tiny card too much or something, then it just
yeah,
tilts.
yeah. And yeah, of course, this deck had a lot of counters dedicated to beating Lugia, so that can also be a bit overwhelming, right? Maybe people weren't exactly expecting Sydney in this deck list as well, and then you lose two energies that you weren't accounting for because you got Sydney, and then Sydney can be recovered by Palpet and by Eldegoss, and maybe I think some of the people I tested I played against, see they had tested like, against like a heavy Yveltal deck, but maybe they hadn't tested against this specific version, and they maybe were caught a bit off guard by
Oh,
cards like Sid.
this deck has a lot of funny things that we have seen in different control builds throughout the year, right? Like you mentioned yourself, you have some loop features from Eldegoss. You even have part of the Silene feature we saw over Mewtwo, and now you also have newer things that you people may not have they have known about it perhaps. But for instance, like let's take an example, Sander. Like you played Pidgeot this time. Like
Yeah,
what kind of
yeah,
purpose did this beautiful card have this time?
yeah. So Pidgeot is definitely interesting. So Pidgeot is a so I was as you can see the deck is for the like almost half the deck is built to beat Lugia. A lot of like the Yveltal strategy, etc. etc. But then you also have to beat Lost Box. And against Mew, luckily there's a huge overlap between what's good against Lugia and what's good against Mew. So you
That's a
have
benefit, yeah.
Mew, yeah, those angles, those matchups are kind of covered. But I definitely wanted something for the Lost Zone matchups, Lost Box matchups. And back when you played Mewtwo V-UNION, that card was like amazing against the Lost Box because they actually couldn't really KO it unless they played maybe Giratina or something like that.
Yep.
But without Mewtwo in this deck, because I felt you don't really have the space. It takes too much space, and it isn't even that amazing against yeah. So I felt like against the Lost Zone decks, I kind of wanted a defense because the Lost Zone decks they can actually lack damage output, right? They don't necessarily have the capability to hit 260, and a Pidgeot with a cape has 260 HP. Although Pidgeot does have lightning weakness, which is quite
So,
unfortunate.
yeah.
It means their Raikau can, with a belt, can always one-shot it, anyways. But that's also why there's Greedent in the list. It has a different weakness. But the Pidgeot mainly was to utilize in a loop, also against Arceus, especially Arceus Duraludon. I was expecting Arceus Duraludon to not play Lost Vacuum. I don't think it would make sense. And Arceus Duraludon kinda has to play double Parasol right now, so they wouldn't be able to play Choice Belt or Tool Jammer.
Makes
So I
sense.
think against Arceus Duraludon, you can also, with a caped Pidgeot, tank a hit. And the interesting thing about Pidgeot is that if you can tank a hit with a Pidgeot against Lost Zone Box or against Arctura or like some other Arceus variant, because the ability kind of makes it heal itself. If as long as you have a bird keeper to pivot it out of the active and then go into an Eldegoss, you're actually kind of similar to the Umbreon deck we played at EOIC.
Lovely deck.
The important part about the Umbreon loop is that you actually a bird keeper every other turn to make up for the card draw because with Eldegoss you shuffle in your Eldegoss and your double turbo. And if you have no draw engine, you're not going to draw enough cards to Eldegoss continuously. But the Pidgeot being potentially capable of tanking hits, and you can kind of like quote unquote like heal the Pidgeot by using Bird Keeper and shuffling it back into your deck. You actually have some way to weave in Bird Keeper into your looping to draw the extra cards that are required to actually make some of the loops work. And then the Pidgeot wasn't in the deck at all to prevent deck out, which is I think something that a lot of people maybe might have thought that you play the Pidgeot because with Pidgeot you never deck out. You can always shuffle it in. But
True that.
that is completely redundant. There's already Bird Keeper Eldegoss. You can already and there's Bruno even if you really
Yeah.
wanna. Decking out is not an issue in the slightest. There's Celine Ballpad, Eldegoss, Bird Keeper. You can Bruno yourself if you want more cards in your deck. So the Pidgeot isn't to
Enough
prevent deck
choice.
out, Yeah, and then so I felt like the Pidgeot kind of against the Lost Zone decks that didn't play lightning attackers. The Pidgeot gave me, besides having Ice Cube, the Pidgeot made a lot of. It was like a very lean. It wasn't even a. It isn't even an evolving. It's not even a VMAX, right? It's
No.
a basic. So it's you only need the one Pidgeot. You can get it out of your prizes with your Swing Heavy or Peonia if you need it in a matchup, and it makes it kind of enables some of the loops. Now with looping against Lost Box, there's a lot of caveat. There's a lot of cards that can come into the mix that change up things. So it's not necessarily always simple or guaranteed. They can play Lost Vacuum, they can play Echoing Horn, Ropes, they can play Raikou, Choice Belt, there's and the Six Goon Net.
Yeah, you
There's
had a
actually
really interesting situation about this, right? Like about with your ice cube and everything, because that's also a potential way to do
yeah,
this.
yeah. So for the Lost Zone box, for the Lost Zone decks, so there's kind of like a combination of two win conditions. You can win with Pidgeot, Greedent, Scare, Birdkeeper, Cape of Toughness, sometimes even Guttermine and Yellhorn, because against a confused Pokemon, they can't like if they miss attacks because of confusion, they
Hmm.
kind of the looping is really easy if they stay confused. So if you can potentially run them out of switch cards, or they might not expect that they need like get out of confusion multiple times, because you can recover Yahorn with Saline as well. So against Lost Box, you have like a defensive win condition, and you also have the Ice Cube, which can also like instantly win the game if you get it set up without it being bossed, or without them having Temple or Echoing Horn Rope or Echoing Horn boss. So that I felt like it was like a nice way to be strong against Lost Zone box. You either can win with Ice Cube, or you can win with this loop. And even if the loop doesn't necessarily win, the loop is also the Pidgeot and the Eldegoss are also pretty useful defensive cards to like just get more time to draw into your Ice Cube combo. And if they spend cards like for example, I played against the Kyogre Lawson deck that some of the Americans brought, and I benched my Ice Cube, put a cape on it, and a twin because I hadn't found my Wash Energy yet, and the Lawson box and Vacuum on the cape, and then Sable-Eyed the Ice Cube for 120 damage, so they KO'd my Ice Cube, but they used the Vacuum in the process, and then in the very late game, I ended up being able to do a loop because they couldn't get rid of my second cape, which kept my Greedent out of KO range. So in that instance, even though I didn't even use the Ice Cube, the fact that the Ice Cube had to be countered gave an opportunity for the loop to be a bit actually function, because the one Vacuum was gone. And then, so the second thing that I also kind of liked about playing the Pidgeots was that it's like a kind of neat combo with Forest Steelstone. It's like a budget. Uh, what's the
If you can't afford Arceus V-Star, you
If you
mean you
can't
play
afford,
this,
if
right?
Arceus V-Star is a bit too expensive, then you can play Pidgeot and Forest Steelstone.
I
Yeah, but it is. I wouldn't say it like I wouldn't play Pidgeot Forest Steelstone together, even just for that purpose, right?
no,
It's
no.
not good enough. But I was planning to play the Pidgeot to have some other way to weave in Eldegoss with yeah, like I explained,
Exactly.
to weave it in the Eldegoss loop, and you get a really nice bonus if you play the Pidgeot. The Forest Sealstone becomes very flexible, because if you draw your Forest Sealstone and you have a Quick Ball in hand, it means you can
Yeah.
Quick Ball for the Pidgeot, Forest Sealstone, grab anything out of your deck. So it's kind of pretty nice. And then Eldegoss itself can also be decent with Forest Sealstone. So it definitely kind of, it was kind of like a very lean way to include a couple cards that served some other purpose, that also gave me another way to play the Sun matchup.
I have a good question for you, Sander, by the way. Speaking of budget, I looked up on Limitless how much your deck cost to build. How much do you think your deck cost to build this time?
In my decks, I think the Snorlaxes might be the only card that costs like more than €2. Probably not very expensive.
I think I looked it up and it was around $34. That was all, I think. But
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. But this was incredibly cheap. It was really, really
Yeah, I
budget.
mean,
This.
I think the Umbreon deck might have been the most expensive deck I've played in the
This is just a fun
Slightly risky
observation
cost.
I just made because yes, typically Control is known for being quite cheap often, but this is really cheap.
Yeah, there's no chase cards in it. There's no V Star and
No,
no.
and there's a budget Arceus even in there. You know, that's all.
Yeah,
That's all I
yeah.
needed. I looked across your list and there was like, and for people who watch the stream match, because I don't know, I belong to the people who really enjoy watching Control in action. I looked at the chat. Not everybody agrees with that statement, but that's another story. But I saw Lucky Egg being played there, and that was a nice treat to see. Like, what made you
Yeah,
go for Lucky Egg?
it's a really it really is a throwback Lucky Egg. I think I think I almost forgot that Lucky Egg was even in the format. This is also the first time I've actually played a tournament with Lucky Egg.
Oh,
So when I was playing against Lugia, like I mentioned before, I felt like the matchup is favored for sure, but
you
you
don't
know,
say.
when you play like 10 games against Lugia, I definitely lost like one or two of them just because I got Marnied and I got Marnied into a unplayable hand. Then they kill your Yveltal and you have to attack 4 times with Yveltal. They have 15 energy or 14 or 16, like somewhere in that ballpark.
Yep.
You don't have to get rid of, because of their energy cost being like um, slightly higher, you don't have to discard 15. Like if they play 15 energy, if you once you discard 13 energies, they
It's pretty
uh,
much game from there. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pretty much game from there, right? So the 4 Yveltals should be good enough. And if you prize one, you can get it with the Suyan. So, but in a lot of the games, you need all 4 of your Yveltals. You need to attack 4 times with Cry of Destruction. And I mean, there's some intricacy as well going on. But you can, if you miss a turn of attacking, and they get to attack twice without you crying of using Cry of Destruction, it's Lugia can just win, especially if you miss another turn, or like if you miss a turn of attacking and you also don't have something like a boss or a Flannery, or like at least a Gormandize.
Yeah. Anything
Uh,
basically like to
yeah,
keep your game going, right? Yeah.
yeah, you need to. You're kind of like a one pricer deck that needs to replenish their one pricer, which isn't that much to ask, but it's also not. It's not without some risk of failing. So when I was testing the matchup more and more, I felt like going into the tournament, I knew, especially the more I talked to like some of the other testing groups, a lot of the testing groups, I feel like they didn't want to play Lugia because of all the Lugia mirrors, but they were incapable of finding anything that could actually reliably beat a lot of the different Lugia builds.
Yeah.
Like maybe you could find a deck that was alright against a certain Lugia build, but then if Lugia played like one or two different tech cards, you still didn't have really a deck that was amazing against Lugia either. So at the event, I felt I kind of was like it was on my radar that a lot of the top players were just they were there were just I mean there was just nothing better than Lugia. I mean
Oh, yeah.
even in
It was
testing,
Luca.
Lugia
Yeah.
felt so insane. Like when I was testing with some of the others, even like the weekend before at the event itself, like the couple days leading up to it, like Lugia was like such an insanely good deck. It was actually it's like the more I saw like I actually the more I saw like other people play Lugia against different matchup, Lugia mirrors, like it felt like the deck was so insanely strong. So when going into the event, I really wanted to make sure that I could improve my win rate in any which way against Lugia if I could find something. And since the only way I kind of was losing at all was by like breaking after a Marnie,
Yeah.
I
That
just
was the best and only
I
move
kind
Lugia pretty
of
much had. Yeah.
yeah I kind of got the idea of like I think Greens plus Cephalon used to play uh, Lugia
Yeah.
a while ago. And it's like kind of like with one visors, it's a nice card. You can put it down. It's nice with Snorlax. You can. It's like a consistency card that you can put down preemptive.
You
Because
can
sometimes
always play it.
with
Yeah.
yeah you can. Sometimes you have like you have a Koras, a Research, and a Bruno in hand. But if you get Marnied, you lose all of them. So, and the Lucky Egg is like a nice insurance that you can put it down preemptive, and even if you get Marnied, it's still going to be there. You're still going to draw your hand up to 7, which is a lot, and you probably find another supporter, etc. Of course, the Lucky Egg it's not without flaws because you can boss around it and you can lost vacuum it. But
But if they boss you, they don't Marnie you.
yeah, if they boss you, they don't Marnie you, and if you have an Yveltal with a twin energy on it, and you Lucky Egg, if they boss around the Yveltal with the energy, you are gonna keep your energy. So
Yep.
it's still kind of you're not too unhappy. And the one thing is the vacuum, but Lugia has no search for vacuum. Like I definitely had a couple spots where if the Lugia player had found the vacuum at the right time, it might have been a little bit scary. But on the in the say in the at the same time, if the Lugia vacuums, and when I was playing against Lugia, if they vacuum the Lucky Egg, it means they are not dealing with a cape or with a Galar Mine. So I definitely also had games where I had a cape on my mill tank, a Galar Mine in play, and an Yveltal with a vacuum. And sure, they can vacuum the Lucky Egg away, but then my mill tank with cape is gonna force out their powerfuls on the Archeops, and then
Yeah.
the Galar Mine is gonna stay, and they might have to Pumpkaboo, which is then a boss target. So even though vacuum can counter cape, there's also other cards that they cannot get rid of if they get rid of a Lucky Egg.
Oh,
That was a nice. It was like a small nice addition.
I got a good one here, Sander. So you played 16 rounds, right? That was all the rounds you played, right? 16?
Yeah.
And
15 Swiss rounds and then top eight.
and how many of those were Lugia again?
Yeah, I played a lot of it. So I was a little bit disappointed to not win against Stort in top eight. Felt like it was a decent matchup. He played well. Very pretty interesting games. I
Oh,
guess it's too long to get into it really, but uh, so I was a little bit so I didn't get further than top eight. But on the other hand, I was really fortunate to hit as many Lugias as I did. So I can't really complain too much actually. So 16 rounds, I was able to ID twice. So and both of the times that I ID'd, I was paired against a Lugia player.
oh,
So
so
if you were
they
to
took the
count,
ID gladly, I guess.
they took the ID gladly. But of course, I didn't play a real match against them, right? So if I were to count the IDs as facing a Lugia, 12 of my 16 rounds were against Lugia and
Hey.
10 and actually played 10 matches against Lugia. And in those 10 matches, my game record actually was 18-2. I lost two games against Lugia and I won 18.
The two games you lost, did you still win the match or just?
No, so against Stuart, I won
Yeah,
one
of
one,
course, yeah.
and then the game three. I guess I'm not counting game three, which it goes the way it goes with control. If they take one prize, they win the match in top cuts. And the other one, I lost in round 9 of day one against. So I still went 1-1 in that match, but I lost a game. It was actually against Raikau Lugia with double boss and double Marnie, or maybe even triple Marnie.
Damn, yeah.
Because if you play Raikau with double boss, what he did, and I think that's like the best way to go about it, is you chase Manaphy, and then you can finish with a double prize with Raikau. But you have to do it you have to save the Raikau and the Aurora energies. Because if you attack with Raikau too early, even if there's no Manaphy, the Raikau can get stuck in the active because once the Yveltal discards the triple Aurora energies that it has,
Yeah.
there's not enough energies for the Raikau to attack an extra time. And it means the Raikau is kind of like stuck in the active and you have to pivot it out, it can get bossed up again. But if you don't use the Raikau until the very, very end, take the last two prizes, you can chase Manaphy and there's not that much recovery at all in the deck. It might be something to like maybe add to the deck, some way to recover Manaphy a bit better. So, and you would also have to play two bosses specifically to like KO Manaphy, and then if it gets Silent recovered, you can KO it again.
I got a final thing because I observed something like many other people. Like, you played really well, Sander, undoubtedly, but the crime was committed. I saw that was. I've seen many things happen, but you lost Zone Pukemuku. What
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah. So, um, yeah, one of the things in this deck is I'm actually playing triple Chorus experiment, and sometimes you have to do some painful. Like playing the Chorus and making the right decisions can be slightly tricky. You have to figure out what you can miss, and sometimes, very unfortunately, the Pyukumuku has to go. But Korra is really strong in this deck because, like I said, the deck is essentially really simple. You play cards that counter the popular decks, and sometimes you play against a certain matchup, and your ISQ and your Wash and your Pidgeot or your Greedent are going to do absolutely nothing. So if you Korras against in the Lugia matchup, you're actually very happy to loss on certain cards because a lot of the cards are so specific for matchups. when you play against Lossenbosch, you can get rid of all the Yveltals and the twins. You don't need them at all. So the Colras was really nice in the deck, and there's also a decent amount of filler, right? The tracking shoes, the Pyukumuku. Sometimes when you Colras, you unfortunately have to get rid of my favorite card, the Pyukumuku.
I think, Sander, this was all we had time for today. And here then, I just want to thank you again for taking the time. And again, congratulations, back-to-back first seed with Control. Let's see if we can make it 3 times. Are you going to Australia, perhaps?
I'm considering it. I'm actually not sure if I'm going to.
In any case, people should watch out if you're going, because, I have a slight idea that you may play Control next time.
Yeah,
Who knows?
Maybe.
Who knows? But thanks again.
Australia will, I think, be the post rotation.
Yeah, indeed. Pretty sure about that.
That's always fun, right? When everything changes, you can go crazy with deck building again. And
fair point, but a lot of things may change, Sander, but certain things don't really change that often. One of them being, is Sander going to play Control, yes or no? But who knows? But again, thank you for being here, and thanks to everyone here watching, listening. It's been a pleasure as always, and I hope you enjoyed this class in Stefan's Classroom, and hope to see you back for another class in Stefan's Classroom. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye, Sander.
Bye.